The morning they left, my mother, Evelyn, checked her carry-on twice. She verified her passport against the itinerary printed on cream cardstock. She reminded my father, Thomas, to confirm the Uber, which he did in the way he did most things in our house, quietly, efficiently, without making eye contact with anyone. Evelyn was wearing a cream linen blazer she only wore when she expected to be photographed. I know this because I had spent 11 years learning to read the signals. The blazer meant she was already somewhere else. The blazer meant today was a content day, not a present one. I was standing at the top of the stairs in socked feet. Neither of them looked up. Thomas existed in our Charlotte house the way heavy furniture exists, present, functional, occupying space without animating it. His silence had never been hostile. It was something quieter and more complete than hostility. An entire absence of engagement extended to the house, to me, to anything that was not directly required of him. He treated silence as a courtesy, which meant he spent most of his life being very courteous indeed. Before she walked out the front door of our beige colonial house in Charlotte, North Carolina, Evelyn stopped at the kitchen island and placed two $10 bills and a silver credit card sealed in a paper sleeve on the surface. She said $20 for the month. The card is for emergencies only. Don't be reckless. She said it with the brisk, disinvested tone of someone reading from a checklist they have already mentally completed. Then she picked up her carry-on and wheeled it toward the door, and Thomas followed and the lock clicked, and I stood at the window and watched the rideshare pull away from the curb. I waited 5 minutes before I moved. The way you wait after a noise in the dark, not expecting anything to happen, but needing the absolute certainty that nothing will. The rideshare had already turned the corner. The street outside was ordinary. A neighbor walking a dog, the lawn service truck parked 2 houses down a Tuesday morning in Charlotte that looked identical to every other Tuesday morning in this neighborhood. Nothing in the exterior of that day indicated that anything unusual had occurred. That was the thing about our house. The exterior was always impeccable. They were going to Paris, then Rome, then Santorini for 30 days. I was 11 years old. I had $20 and an unactivated credit card and a house with 6 bedrooms that had never felt like mine, and the lock had clicked, and the street was ordinary, and I was the only thing left inside. My mother's social media presence was, by the time I was 11, the most carefully maintained thing in our household. She had hundreds of thousands of followers. She posted staged Sunday dinners where the napkins were folded into precise triangles, and the candles were always the same height. She posted the garden in spring with the light falling at exactly the angle that made it look like a painting. She posted the kitchen in morning light, the coffee cup placed just so the novel beside it opened to a page she had not been reading. She expressed gratitude frequently for her beautiful life. I had been edited out of it by age 8. Not all at once, gradually, the way you notice a photo has been cropped only when you look for something that used to be there. My face disrupted the aesthetic, apparently. I was too angular, too watchful, too visibly present in a way that conflicted with the version of the house she was curating. So I disappeared from the feed, and after a while I stopped expecting to appear in it. And after a while longer I internalized the lesson without realizing I was learning it, that taking up less space was the closest thing to safety available to me. I want to be honest about something I did not understand until much later. I did not become quiet and self-sufficient because I was naturally independent. I became those things because I was trying to earn something. I thought if I needed nothing, asked for nothing, caused no disruption to the composition of our household, she would eventually notice the quality of my absence and turn back toward me. When she announced the Europe trip, told me I was old enough to manage, with the same practical tone she used to schedule lawn service. I felt something I did not have a name for at 11, but have since identified as grief. Not for the trip, for the understanding that my obedience had never been working. It had just been making me easier to leave. On day 3, I walked to the gas station 4 blocks from the house to buy a can of soup and a bottle of juice. I put them on the counter and handed over the silver card. The cashier ran it twice and looked at me with the flat, uninvested expression of someone delivering information they have no stake in, and told me it was not going through. I walked home in the August heat carrying nothing and sat at the kitchen island where the $20 and the useless card still lay and opened the calculator on my phone. $20, 30 days, 66 cents per day if I was disciplined about it, which I was, because discipline was the one resource I had in reliable supply. I went to the grocery store and moved through the aisles with the calculator open, running the numbers against each item, putting things back on the shelf when they did not fit the math. I left with 6 packs of instant ramen, a loaf of white bread, and a jar of peanut butter. I arranged them in the cabinet and looked at them for a moment, aware I was looking at a month's worth of food, and then made half a pack of noodles and ate slowly and drank 2 full glasses of water after and went to bed before dark because sleeping was free and hunger was quieter when you were not awake to feel it. Half a pack in the morning, half at night. Water in between, as much of it as I could stomach, because water occupies space in a way that hunger cannot argue with. Outside, the neighborhood continued its impeccable presentation: edged lawns, clean driveways, the composed silence of a suburb wealthy enough to keep its difficulties private. Inside, I was 11 years old, rationing 66 cents a day, and understanding with a precision that no classroom had ever offered me exactly what my place was in the accounting of our household. On day 5, desperate in the way that only becomes possible when desperation has had 4 full days to accumulate, I remembered the ceramic piggy bank on the shelf in my bedroom. My grandfather had given it to me when I was 6, a round, slightly lopsided thing he had painted himself in the brown and white colors of a cow, because I had once told him cows were my favorite animal. I had kept birthday cash in it for years, small amounts, $5 here and 10 there, the kind of savings that felt significant at 11. I wrapped it in a towel and broke it over the edge of the bathtub. The ceramic split cleanly. Inside folded into a small square and wedged against the bottom was a piece of notepaper in my mother's handwriting. It read, I.O.U, borrowed for Paris spending money, with a small smiley face drawn beside it. I sat on the bathroom floor with the 2 halves of the piggy bank in my lap for a long time. There are moments that function as a before and after, and this was one of them, not because it was the worst thing that had happened, but because it was so specific and so small and so completely deliberate. She had opened the piggy bank my grandfather painted. She had taken the money. She had left a note with a smiley face, and then she had gone to Paris. I called her. She answered from somewhere that had music in the background, the low, expensive kind, and I told her the card did not work, and I did not have food, and I had just found the note in the piggy bank. She exhaled slowly. She said I was being dramatic. She said $20 was plenty for a child who was not wasteful. She hung up. That night, she posted a photograph from a candlelit restaurant in Rome, the kind of place where the menu does not have prices. The caption read, La Dolce Vita. On day 7, my neighbor, Mr. Arthur Pendleton, knocked on the door. He was in his 70s, retired, the kind of person who noticed things because he had time to pay attention. He had seen the driveway empty for a week, and something in the pattern had bothered him enough to walk over. He stood at the door in a flannel shirt and looked at me with the full, unhurried attention of someone who had decided to actually see what was in front of him and asked whether I had eaten today. I told him the whole of it. He brought me inside and fed me spaghetti and garlic bread and a glass of milk, and while I ate, he said something I have repeated to myself many times since. He said, "Evidence is the thing that gets believed. Everything else is just a story someone can argue with. Write it down. Record it if you can. Make it so that the truth has somewhere to stand." I went home and found my old tablet in the desk drawer and pressed record. If my mother's life was a curated fiction, I would become the documentarian of the real one. I would film everything my mother had spent years editing out. In the second week, I was attending a mandatory summer enrichment program enrolled before the trip. I think partly to keep me occupied and partly because an enrichment program photograph looked appropriate in an August post. I was sitting in math class on a Wednesday morning when the room went bright at the edges in the way that happens when your body has been running a deficit it can no longer manage silently. I gripped the edge of the desk and breathed and waited for it to pass. It did not pass. The nurse took me out of class and weighed me. She looked at the number and then looked at my teacher, Mrs. Gable, and neither of them said anything for a full moment. In 8 days, I had lost 9 pounds. They exchanged the look that adults exchange when they have already made a decision and are working out between themselves the most careful way to act on it. The school contacted my parents. Evelyn called that evening. Her voice had changed, not louder but lower and more precise, stripped of the polished warmth she used for her public persona, down to something underneath that I recognized as the real register of her authority. She said, "If you breathe one word to anyone about any of this, I will put you in boarding school. You will not live in this house." She said it with the calm of someone who has made the decision before delivering it. My hands were shaking when I pressed record on the tablet and held it up to the phone speaker for the entirety of what she said next. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed with the tablet still in my hand. My hands had stopped shaking and gone to something colder and steadier. A notification appeared at the top of the screen, white text on gray remote wipe, initiated by parent account. Below it, a loading bar had already begun filling in from the left. A small percentage number climbed in the corner, 4%. 5. She was in Santorini. She had just threatened me with boarding school. And she was wiping my tablet from a Greek island to destroy the evidence before she came home. I do not fully know how to describe the next 4 minutes except to say that I moved faster than I have moved before or since. I ran next door barefoot and knocked hard on Mr. Pendleton's door, and when he opened it, I said, "I need your USB drive right now. I do not have time to explain." He did not ask questions. He went to his desk and came back with the drive, and I plugged it in and started transferring files. 22 video diaries, the refrigerator photos, the grocery receipts photographed flat on the desk, the recording of my mother's threat, while the factory reset loading bar climbed in the corner of the same screen. 14%, 22, 38. The transfer finished 4 seconds before the tablet went dark and reset to the setup screen. I pulled the USB drive free and held it in my closed fist and stood in Mr. Pendleton's hallway with my heart doing something loud and disorganized. He stood across from me without saying anything for a moment. Then he said, "Well, let's make sure that stays somewhere safe." He put it in a tin in the back of his kitchen cabinet behind the spare batteries and the birthday candles. I went home and lay on the floor of my bedroom in the dark for a long time, holding very still the way you hold still when something has almost happened and you need your body to understand that it did not. On day 22, a caseworker named Ms. Lynn arrived. She had been sent by the school. Mrs. Gable had filed the report the same day she and the nurse had exchanged that look quietly, and without telling me, which I understood later was its own form of care. Ms. Lynn moved through the house with the methodical attention of someone doing a job she took seriously. She opened the refrigerator. She opened the cabinet with the remaining ramen. She sat across from me at the kitchen island and asked in a direct and unhurried way whether I wanted to be safe. I said yes. I gave her Mr. Pendleton's address and told her about the USB drive. The investigation confirmed what the footage showed and then some. Evelyn and Thomas had spent just under $44,000 during their 30-day trip, Paris hotels, Roman restaurants, a villa rental in Santorini. The financial records also confirmed what I had understood since day 3, but could not yet prove the silver credit card had been deliberately flagged as "do not activate" by Evelyn before they left. It was not an oversight. Someone had sat down, identified the card, and made a decision, and the bank record showed the date and time of that decision and the name of the account holder who made it. My parents came home on day 30. By that evening, they had organized a welcome home party for 38 guests. Champagne, a catered spread, and a slide projector set up in the living room. Cycling through the trip photographs, Paris at sunset, the Colosseum in morning light. Santorini white and blue against the Aegean. Evelyn was mid-conversation holding a flute of something sparkling, wearing the expression she wore in rooms full of people who were watching her when the doorbell rang. Ms. Lynn came in with 2 officers and a warrant. The music was cut. The room went still in the specific way. Rooms go still when everyone present understands simultaneously that the event they are attending has changed entirely and will not be changed back. Ms. Lynn walked to the projector and unplugged my mother's laptop. She plugged in her own. The Santorini photographs dissolved off the wall. In their place, the face of an 11-year-old girl, pale and slightly shivering, holding a tablet camera toward herself in a kitchen with an empty refrigerator visible in the background. My voice came through the living room speakers into 38 people's silence. Today is day 15. There is 1 egg in the refrigerator. I have $4 left. My mother posted from a rooftop restaurant in Rome last night. The projector ran through the footage, the empty shelves, the scale, the broken piggy bank on the bathroom floor, the 2 ceramic halves, and the I.O.U. note with the smiley face photographed in place. The grocery receipts. 22 mornings of a girl sitting at a kitchen table stating the date, the balance, and what she had eaten the day before, in a calm and level voice, because Mr. Pendleton had told her that evidence was the thing that got believed, and she had decided to make evidence the one thing she had in sufficient supply. The room did not gasp or erupt. It simply went quiet and held that quiet with a completeness I had not heard in a room full of people before. Some guests set their glasses down. Some looked at Evelyn and then looked carefully away, the movement of people who have recognized something they do not want to be associated with and are deciding without coordinating to make that decision visible by staying still. The champagne on the table continued to go flat. The catered food sat untouched on the serving trays. Not one of the 38 people in that room said a single word in my mother's defense. I think they had known something. Not the specifics, perhaps. Not the credit card, not the piggy bank, not the remote wipe attempt from a Greek island, but the outline of it, the shape of a woman who edited her child out of her photographs and called it an aesthetic choice. The footage had not shocked them. It had confirmed something they had been carrying quietly and could now, in the presence of 22 days of evidence, finally set down. Evelyn and Thomas were arrested that night. They accepted a plea agreement probation community service, a felony record. The family court judge terminated their parental rights in a proceeding that took less than an hour, which I remember noticing at the time, less than an hour to undo what had been documented across 30 days and 11 years. I went to live with my Aunt Clara, who is Evelyn's younger sister, and who is in nearly every measurable way her opposite. Aunt Clara's apartment was small and genuinely lived in, cluttered with the honest accumulation of a person's actual life rather than its curated presentation. Mismatched furniture. Plants at various stages of thriving and not thriving. A cat who occupied the best seat on the couch without apology and accepted affection on his own schedule. She cooked dinner on weeknights and asked me questions about my day that required more than one word to answer, and then listened to the full answer with the attention of someone who had actually wanted to know. I did not know what to do with that quality of attention for most of the first year. I kept waiting for the angle behind it the way I had always waited for the cost of any kindness in our house. It took me a long time to understand that some people ask questions simply because the answer matters to them. I am 18 now. I start college in the fall on a full pre-law scholarship. Evelyn has sent letters through the court system, formal, carefully worded, written by someone who has had time to think about how they will be received. I read them. I put them away in a drawer. The decision of whether and when and how to respond belongs entirely to me, and I have decided that what to do with that decision is something I am in no hurry about. I have time. For the first time in my life, I have time, and I am learning to spend it without checking whether anyone is watching. Here is what I will say directly before I go. My mother calculated for 11 years that my love and my obedience would buy my silence. She calculated that the aesthetic was worth more than the truth, and that I was a variable she could manage by keeping me small enough not to require attention. She was not the first person to run that calculation. People who depend on your silence always have a word for it. Loyalty, family maturity, not making things unnecessarily difficult. The word changes depending on who is asking. The function is always the same. They need you to protect them from the consequences of what they have done to you, and they will dress that need in whatever language they believe you will accept. What she did not calculate was that the person she had spent 11 years training to take up no space and ask for nothing was also, without knowing it, learning to document everything. Every day, every receipt, every morning with the camera, the date, the balance, the truth. Silence only ever protects the people it benefits, never you. By pressing record, I did not just survive. I canceled the only narrative that had ever been told about our family and replaced it finally with the unedited one.